Alright guys, this is Hero. How's everyone doing today? Ad sub Kesuho. Today I'm going over the Sun's debilitated transit in the sign of Libra, occurring this year of 2025 from October 17th to about November 16th. Okay, so it's standard, usual, about 1 month. Now, on the surface, I usually try to be as spiritually optimistic as possible, but sometimes certain combination of factors forces me to be a little bit extra realistic. Okay. On the surface, it's not looking too great because you have this Sun debilitated in Libra, and Libra's ruler Venus is debilitated in Virgo, and in Sun's actual sign that it owns, Leo, there is a Ketu there, right? So in a nutshell, what does all this mean? Well, if I add it layer by layer, Sun gets debilitated in Libra. Why? Because Sun it represents the ego, specifically like the identity and things like that. So when it gets placed in Libra, your ego or your identity, basically focusing on other people, is always going to be a disaster. Okay, it's like whenever you're looking for validation or attention or all that kind of energies from other people, it's not that great, right? Now you add in this Venus component here, and what this means is any sort of possible enjoyment I can get from other people is not enough for me, right? This is why Venus gets debilitated in Virgo. Virgo is a very calculative sign. So for the rational mind, like nothing's ever enough. Nothing's ever good enough. It's always looking for better, right? Which could be good in certain places or times, but when it comes to enjoyment, it's not. With enjoyment, you want to just almost accept whatever it is you have or whatever it is you're experiencing, right? So you have the Sun, your identity, because this video is from the focus of the identity. It is looking for impossible validation from other people. With other people, your experiences with them are not enough. And to add another layer on top, this Ketu here is in Leo, and what this could cause you to do. See, Ketu is a very extreme planet, right? It can make you just suddenly want to do something, okay, or suddenly want you to not do something. So in the realm of Leo, which is where Ketu is, which you could say in a sense governs fulfillment, this could basically, how does this all add up, right? Well, one thing you have to always notice is, people focus on the long planet transits for a reason. I even have it on my channel. I have two separate playlists, short and long planets, right? The long planets, like the planets that move slower, they kind of set the tone of your karma, right? And the shorter ones kind of set exactly when and how it's going to play out. But the long ones kind of dictate. So let me just show you what I mean here, right? So you have Ketu in Leo, right? So this Ketu in Leo can kind of just suddenly make you want to do something or not do something to achieve some sort of inner fulfillment, right? Now, when that suddenness comes, right? Now your Sun, who's already debilitated in Libra, could want to do something a little bit more extreme in order to gain that fulfillment, okay? And especially because Rahu is in Aquarius, also aspecting the Sun. So it's like getting double hammered, right? The Rahu is actually the one who's kind of convincing the Sun to do something extra for like attention or something, or kind of guiding it that, hey, this is kind of what you could want. And the Ketu's kind of like almost making it like we don't have a choice here. We have to do this thing, right? There's no other choice, okay? And then the Venus, it adds to the Sun basically because it rules the sign that the Sun's in, and it's debilitated. It's kind of adding the flavor like, hey, anything we do is not good enough, right? I don't feel any enjoyment, whatever, right? So as you can see here, this is not exactly the best lump sum of factors, especially from a Sun standpoint, right? So especially if you're running some kind of Sun dasha or something like that. Overall, not the best, right? But now, how can we actually look at? So I had to say this, and I'm gonna move. I'm at 5 minutes now, so I'll move on to the rest of the video. But I had to start off with this, right? You cannot completely just live in, spiritual fairyland and, everything's all about growth and all this stuff, right? You have to consider the fact that these factors are very strong and prevalent for most of this transit, okay? It could get a little easier once Venus goes itself into Libra from Virgo, right? But that is definitely not the majority of this transit. For the majority of it is in Virgo. Now, moving forward, right? So how can we kind of look at this and say, okay, how can we make the positive here out of this situation? Okay. The first thing we can do is we can recognize that every other planet involved here, when I mean every other planet involved, I mean every other possible planet on the chart, like Jupiter or Mars or Saturn or something like that, even though they might not directly aspect or get aspected or somehow is like directly involved with this sun, the whole chart comes together to make a certain flow, right? Like, for example, Jupiter, it is in Cancer, right? So I just made a video on this, but basically Jupiter gets exalted in Cancer because when the consciousness is focused on nurturing and comforting others, that's when you're in your highest state of spiritual elevation, right? This is why things like seva and service and all this kind of stuff is the best, right? Now, there's also a reason why Jupiter only changes signs once a year, right? Because in order for the consciousness to fully lock in, the certain long-term spiritual lessons, right? It needs to stay somewhere for a very long time to let the ego in the mind and all the other quicker planets go through a bunch of lessons so that from a soul level, you jump up one holistic lesson, if that made sense, right? So the quicker planets, the more superficial planets, they go through lessons quickly, while the more spiritual planets, they kind of go through lessons a little bit more gradually. And within those gradual cycles, there's these quicker, since this video is about the sun, let's just focus on the sun. There's other quicker ego cycles, which makes sense, right? Your ego needs to go through a lot of stuff in order for your spiritual to kind of level up, okay? So for example, how could I use this situation here, which on the surface doesn't look too much, and kind of grow from this somehow, okay? So if we take Jupiter in Cancer, right? So it's trying to grow in its exalted way of serving others, right? So your sun, your ego is not necessarily going to love being in this spot, right? So we can actually use this, right? Because the sun is debilitated once a year for a reason. It's not like it's debilitated once every 10 years or 20 years or 100 years. It's debilitated once every year, right? And that means there is a certain reason as per why, your ego needs to go through this 1 month cycle of year of looking for attention or validation a little bit more from other people. Okay, so you can use, right? This is not going to change. Just because you recognize this, that does not change it, right? But you can use this month to experience that, oh, wow, man, I'm really looking for validation and attention, and it's just really not giving me anything, right? And let me, kind of embrace this and embody this in the sense, especially because Jupiter is also exalted. So you have an exalted Jupiter and you have a debilitated sun. So you can say, oh, wow, this really is not taking me anywhere spiritually. It's just causing me a lot of suffering. And I know that from a spiritual standpoint, comforting and nurturing others comforting and nurturement is, the best from more of a consciousness standpoint. Let me apply my consciousness as much as possible away and detach from the ego, right? I get that there's certain things that cannot be controlled, but, and we're all going to have an ego. Some of us might have the sun dashas or things like that, make it more prominent, but let me get away from this as much as possible. And let me connect more with the consciousness on nurturing others, because this is going to lead to complete disaster at every single way, turn, shape, or form, right? There's some times when going towards this is necessary for various reasons, right? But I would strongly recommend that right now that would not be the case here, okay? Another thing, right? So once Venus goes into Libra, right? How could this change things? Because even though it's not a majority of the time, I just realized it is a decently significant amount of time. Okay, so how does this change it? Okay, because that kind of ties into the point that I was about to make earlier. So remember all the flavors that were added, right? So you have the sun in Libra looking for attention from other people, and then you have this Rahu trying to convince it, hey, do something crazy, and then you have the Ketu's telling you, yeah, we need to do, certain things, but like there's certain things that we just gotta do. We gotta get off our chest, whatever, right? Now, this Venus basically says, okay, whatever we do, we could actually have a potential to enjoy it a little bit. Okay, so, and again, this is where there's no real good or bad. See, this is a situation where potentially this Venus could actually be more bad than good. But it could also be more good than bad. It all depends on your chart and what your current state of spiritual consciousness and things like that. Let me give you an example of the bad first, okay? And this is why the whole thing kind of comes together, or it has to come together as like a unified thing. It's not just this, 1 point here, 1 point there, -1 here, so no, it doesn't work like that, okay? You have this Venus that's now able to find enjoyment by the thing the sun does. Okay, so let's just say I'm just gonna make up an example. Let's just say you're flirting around with people you're not supposed to, right? This Sun in Libra with the Rahu aspect and the Ketu in Leo is basically saying we need some sort of fulfillment like this in our life. And the Venus could be like, this is not really, previously in Virgo, it could be like, this is not really good enough, right? So again, that could be good or bad. It could basically take you down this path of, it's not good enough, I kind of give up, I quit. Or it could take you down this path, which the second one is more the likelihood of, it's not good enough, let me strive for more, right? Which is not that great, right? Now that it goes through Libra, it kind of finds enjoyment, right? But now you have to remember, Rahu is also influencing this Venus also, right? So on one hand, the Venus could be like, I'm finding so much enjoyment, let's just keep doing it, right? Let's just keep doing, these bad things like like over drinking with certain people, or having certain conversations that we shouldn't be having, whether it's gossip related, flirting related, whatever, right? And on the other hand, the Venus in Libra could, and this is the more likelihood from a general standpoint, in my opinion, because it moving from debilitation to its own side, overall, it's usually not going to make it worse. But I'm just explaining that sometimes it could, right? In that first example, but usually it'll say, hey, you know what? I'm able to find some enjoyment. It kind of relieves your mental suffering a little bit and blah, 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 right? But you have to remember that what you do and all that kind of stuff is up to a lot of other factors besides the stuff that I'm just talking about in this video. Okay, so, all right, I'm at 14 minutes. I think that's the end of a 1 month sun transit video. Okay, but if you have any questions or comments, as usual, you can feel free to let me know. I hope this video taught at least one person something. If it did, I, don't mind making these kind of videos. Okay, but yeah, that's it. If you have any questions or comments, you can feel free to let me know. And until next time, I'll talk to everyone later. Thank you all very, very much for watching.